Big welcomes to my channel, Jane, Charlie, and Hannah. It is such a privilege to have you all here for this conversation about just hearing from some unschoolers who are now grown up. Such a buzz to have you here. Welcome.
Older Lucy.
Thank you.
So I first met you all 8 years ago. We had basically climbed off the plane from the UK, where I had spent the last month reading a John Holt book, and we landed in New Zealand, and I decided we were unschoolers now. Our kids were only 6 months old and not quite 3. And we were like, right, we're unschoolers now. So we just Googled unschooling NZ, which led us 2 weeks later to a New Zealand unschooling camp where I met you all. And you were little then, and now you're grown-ups. So I was excited to have a conversation with you all because Jane, obviously you've written a book all about your lives as unschoolers. But also, I know that people get so curious about what unschoolers go on to do, whether they liked being unschooled. You know, we got a lot of questions like that. So I thought I'd ask you some of those questions if that works.
Really?
Awesome.
Cool. So I'm wondering, let's start with Hannah. If you can tell us how old you are and what you're up to at the moment, your passions and projects. And maybe your favorite thing about having been unschooled.
Oh, why? Okay, 3 things. Shut up. So I'm 23 and I'm in my 4th year of a BA at Vic Uni in Wellington, majoring in sociology and te reo Māori and minoring in Māori studies and English lit. Bit too much, that's why it took 4 years. And this year I'm just finishing up with a couple of papers, both te reo Māori. And I'm also working as a teacher of te reo Māori for Vic Uni, so like kind of short courses they run and also tutoring some of the te reo courses. So that's me this year, a bit of study and a bit of work after 3 years of full-time study. Unschooling, I think one of the things that really stands out to me about, I think particularly the way we were kind of brought up, and it's hard because there's a very strong relationship between unschooling and parenting, I think.
Yeah.
Very, very similar, big overlapping Venn diagram. But I think one of the things that unschooling does essentially is give kids a lot of agency. And I think that stands out to me hugely from my childhood is having a lot of freedom, having a lot of respect from adults, you know, not in a in a really good way that kind of tried to, I guess, build mutual respect between kids and adults. And I think some of the aspects of unschooling is like a way of educating kids. Yeah, that idea of agency is really central to that. And I appreciate it a lot in hindsight.
Oh, thank you. That's so fascinating to hear a bit about you. And I really want to wheel back round to that particular point in a little minute. Cool. Charlie?
Yeah, hey. So I'm newly 18. I guess I can say that for a little bit longer only. And right now I am sort of just running my own business, doing videography, like filmmaking projects for people. So I guess over the last kind of 4 years, I've been building that up in a professional capacity. I've always loved making films, and when I was a kid, I've always loved filmmaking and telling stories. And now I've built it up to where it's like my own business and kind of a full-on lifestyle. So at the moment, I'm just actually in my van. I've kitted out to be like a little studio for my work where I can edit videos and that kind of thing. So a lot of my work is traveling around like the North Island at the moment, doing that kind of stuff, up in Tongariro at the moment. Yeah, I guess like for me, it's hard to reflect on homeschooling. I think I said this in the book when I wrote the little passage like a year ago now, I think, like 2 years ago. But it's still hard for me to reflect. But I guess the major standout, like Hannah said, was like the freedom. and the respect from adults. And like personally within like my journey in filmmaking, that's been a huge thing, because from like 14, even like around 14, I could go out into like the city and into the world and like talk to adults on like an even kind of playing level. It felt, I wasn't like talking up to them or scared of them, or I could just approach them as just people, and that was really valuable for me, my networking, that kind of thing. And that was away from like Mum didn't know what I was doing. I was out like making contacts and working with counselors and stuff, and just out doing my thing from like that age, which was really cool. And just like having the freedom to do that means I could kind of start that journey like sooner. And now that I'm 18, I've kind of like, I'm fully into my like full-time doing what I want to do kind of thing, rather than sort of just starting to think about that. So I love that I got to start that earlier, because I had the freedom to choose what to do. That's probably the biggest standout.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, for me too. I reckon going along to that very first unschooling camp where I first met you all 8 years ago, that was the standout thing for me. When Ramona, my eldest, was born, I just had a kind of intrinsic sense that she was her own person and not just an extension of me, and that somehow I had to figure out how to raise this person in a way where they knew they were the agent of their own life, where she knew she was an autonomous being, and where I treated her with respect and dignity. But it felt really countercultural, basically, until I got to the unschooling camp. And then I was surrounded by 120 people all treating their kids that way. And it was like a very palpable sense of mutual respect. So it's very cool that you raised it. I love also that you're both on kind of slightly different tracks. There's a lot of feeling that unschoolers might just all go into like the artistic, creative, entrepreneurial world. And I love, Hannah, that you are doing something that is about your passions and actually looks quite traditional in a way, like going through university and even becoming a facilitator and teacher, which is quite a normal kind of job, isn't it?
Super mainstream, super square.
You're so mainstream, Hannah. Jane, I am going to ask you questions, but I'm just obviously obsessed with Hannah and Charlie right now while I've got them here. So my next question is just to ask you to reflect a little bit wider on that particular thing. How do you think unschooling prepared you for sort of the work you're doing now, or for adulthood? You sort of both touched on it a little bit, but I just hear a lot from the naysayers out there, or maybe just the people who are a little bit fearful. Maybe they feel like tugged towards unschooling, but they still have some fears that they're going to raise humans who are not fit for society. And so I'd love to hear how you think the opposite is possibly true, how you think unschooling actually gave you what you needed or served you.
You want to go, Charlie, or shall I?
Sure. No, I've just got something popped into my head. It was just that I feel like often you learn from like jumping into something and making mistakes and just doing it. And I guess, like I said before, unschooling for me just let me do that at a really young age. Like, I could be entrepreneurial and make my own business and do that kind of work when I was 18 and like left school, I guess, but it was still taking a while to kind of build that up. Whereas I feel like the fact I could jump into that sooner, I guess, and just learn from doing it, that was really awesome.
You actually had a really successful business quite early, didn't you? How old were you when you first kind of reached a success in your entrepreneurial journey?
I guess it's hard, like financially, like successful, like not until like last year, like like it's built up to being full time, but it's taken 4 years for sure. I guess like successful in terms of doing cool projects and working with cool people. Like I've worked with like rappers and council candidates and MPs, like just like range of cool people. Like that was definitely a success in that sense. But a good 4 years to build up to being like a decent business. Not
I can just remember you having your own very autonomous projects, probably from when you're around 14 years old. You were sort of like building up your sort of portfolio and that kind of thing, weren't you?
Yeah, for sure. That was really cool. I mean, at that sort of time, it was just doing projects for fun, I guess, or just to build up the portfolio. But yeah, from there it just kind of grew, which is cool. You sort of make connections with people and just go further into those connections.
Cool. Thank you. What do you reckon, Hannah?
I think if I reflect back, the things that I think have like set me up from my childhood and the ways I was educated are not things that are necessarily specific to unschooling. Like I can see them being very present for kids or whānau who are going to whatever kinds of schools. But I think more just the idea that it's very possible for those elements to be present for unschooled kids or whānau. Like, yeah, there's every kind of situation is very different and specific to a family and a kid, I guess. But a lot of, yeah, there's probably two things I'd pick out. One is community. So I live in a intentional community. What an interesting phrase. Now I have for the past 3 years, and I think my comfort and my interest in that stems from us being raised within different communities. So like whether that's geographically or the unschooling community, or just knowing a lot of people and having to talk to a lot of people, different people, and having that be something that's valued. And I think going back to that idea of kind of the agency and freedom, that's kind of the anarchy, right? The perceived anarchy of unschooling, where it's like, yeah, what do we have mum says in the book, like one rule, which was don't misuse musical instruments and board games. It's like, that's kind of true. There weren't rules. We could do what we want, but the caveat, the kind of flip side to that was as long as it's not hurting other people. So I think, yeah, having freedom and agency that was really grounded in community and in other people has been the most formative thing for me. And that's interesting because that's not really something people think of in terms of education, right? Like it's not, education is about like learning and thinking in a very set amount of subjects, but you know, like you can always learn stuff. It's really easy to learn stuff a lot of the time. People are able to at any stage in their life. People are able to do stuff, and even if it's new or scary, like, yeah, you don't have to have gone through high school to go to uni.
Just quickly, can you just give us a couple of sentences about how you did end up at university without formal education?
Yeah, so I did, when I was 16, I started doing NCAs through the correspondence school, Te Kura. So I did that, like I kind of did the bare minimum, barely did. If you're doing, if we're looking at just papers, you need to get into most unis in New Zealand, it's like a handful of subjects. So I did like, it's like level 1 math, level 2 English, 3 level 3 subjects. I'm assuming it's the same still nowadays. So I did that in like a year and a half while working part-time and then full-time, and just got university entrance real easy through that. And then I went off to England and various places for a couple of years. So I just wanted to have like that university entrance so that I could come back to that and go to uni.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for sharing that. What do you think was maybe one of the most surprising things that your mum did with raising you, or like the thing that maybe might have raised a few eyebrows out there from people like looking in? Was there anything that...
Do you want like alphabetical, chronological, where to start? Like how long do we...
Was it just the whole community just like this constantly?
Yeah,
pretty much. And now the book's out and they're like, oh right, gotcha.
That's what she was doing.
Yeah. No, are you thinking the same thing, the trip?
I wasn't surprised by that. Were you surprised by that?
Not the
it's
time.
Like totally mum's thing to like mortgage our house, can I say that? To like take her kids off backpacking around Turkey. 14 and how old was I? 13, 14, and then 2 youngers. Nah, that was like everyday kind of shenanigans, surely.
Yeah. But like to be honest, nothing at the time was surprising because that's all we knew, right? Like that was just mum. That was just our lifestyle. Like it was normal. It was normal. But looking back, like probably the trip, I guess, like yeah, it was a pretty like wild thing to do. It was awesome. And like so many cool experiences. Went for 4 months over like 7 countries out there.
We're really lucky.
Really lucky, like incredible experience. But yeah, like that was quite wild, definitely. Yeah. But so many formative moments coming out of that, like seeing lots of different cultures and bringing, like, I guess subconsciously bringing that back.
Yeah, I think
we left Hannah over there, so
oh yeah, you guys just forgot me. You're right, it's fine. It's fine. It's very formative. It's good.
You were 14 then, weren't you?
I was 14. We had some friends in Switzerland who offered to like have me as an exchange student for a year. They had a daughter or a child my age. So I just like, yeah, ended up staying, sort of accidentally being an exchange student for a year, which was great. I was thinking about going to school before we left on that trip because I was quite like sick of just being home with my family, which is sort of a universal 12, 13, 14-year-old homeschool, unschool kind of experience. I think you get to a point where you really want to be breaking out of the family nest. And actually, like, that's often what happens. Like, people end up going to school for a bit or going off to work or going off to like stay with other families. So it's interesting. But
yeah, I can remember Jane telling me about that in the kitchen at another unschooling camp. And I was like, where's Hannah? And she was like, oh, she's in Switzerland. And I was like, how old is Hannah?
I have to jump in here to
Sorry.
say, at 14, Hannah was amazing because she just looked at me and she said, Mum, I've just been handed this opportunity. I should take it, right? And I was like, well, you're 14, but yeah. Like, it was amazing. We whizzed around op shopping in London to find some winter clothing because we just had little backpacks. And then she just flew off back to Geneva and went to school in German. And she's emailing me saying, oh yeah, I'm just doing physics in German. And it's like, good luck with that. But the first day of school, she Zoomed or Skyped us. We were still in England. And I said, how was your day at school? She goes, well, we're going on an art trip to Venice. And I'm like, there you are. Boom. That's why you're there.
Awesome. And I love that is one of the things that I think really accompanies unschooling, because it's such a journey of sort of letting go and like letting your children just flourish no matter kind of how that looks and who they are. It's like a real almost like vision quest type scenario, I think, as a mother and a father or parent to just step back and just let them go and release them and egoically detach, that I think that does sort of prime you to then have that same sort of like open-minded, almost trustful relationship to sort of other people in the world and opportunities as well. It's definitely something I notice in so many unschoolers is that they are kind of just wide open to whatever opportunities come floating along and are quite willing, perhaps more than others, to experiment and try things out and say yes to whatever adventure is on the plate that day.
I agree. I think the other thing about unschooling or homeschooling generally is you have more time for all the things. So all the things that Hannah was talking about, Charlie was talking about. Anyone can study at any stage, but you have all this time. You just freed up a whole childhood. So you can go deep, you can go off on little tangents.
Okay, 2 things real quick. Sorry, Lucy, I won't make you a very long video. One, like the value of doing nothing, right? Like you've been allowed to just do nothing and let your mind wander and just be allowed to like lie around and stare at the clouds. Very valuable. So many adults wish they had that, right? It's something I value so highly. Very good for kids, I think. But second, also like there was also so much stuff as well. Like it wasn't, I don't think of our childhood as like a very sort of empty stretch of time that was really open. Like there was so much available to do and think and engage with and be challenged by, and different people we were meeting and new ideas and things to learn. I think that's really important, like to feed kids with that as well. And that's where you see kids who do really well at school, the ones who do get fed from that experience or are able to be supported in just engaging with a lot of stuff, whatever it is they want to. So like, yeah, and I think where unschooling could go wrong, sorry, like negativity, is where there's not that being fed in, right? Like that's possibly the kind of thing for any kind of educational pathway, any form of childhood, is if there's a lack of stuff for a kid to digest.
Can I say, like, I know you're talking about adults like regretting not having like time to just be bored or just dream about, but I actually feel a little bit of that as well, because I mean, from like when I was 14, I had a highly scheduled like week. Like I was like shooting stuff and like having meetings. Like I was real, like if I compare myself to my friends who are homeschooled or at school, like I quite like a scheduled, like busy week that I could put on myself. And like now in the last, I'd say 6 months or so, I really felt like a desire just to kind of like step away a bit in a week where I don't have anything I have to do, or just like kind of have more time to be a kid again. So that's like something I realized is in my like freedom of not having to do anything as a home unschooler, I end up putting a lot of stuff on myself to do, and I slightly regret that, I guess, or like make sure I balance that with this free time.
Yeah, which you can do now, but that did make me feel like, that is the energy of a teenager though as well, isn't it? I was the same as a teenager. I had like so much energy to give the world, and I feel like teenagers are like these like powerhouses of energy and ideas and passion and beliefs and all the physical resource to make things happen. And I feel like we should release them to do this stuff, but instead we like get them sitting at a desk where they're just like like almost like self-combusting with all the energy they've got that they should be throwing into the thing that they're really passionate about, but are instead having to like learn this diabolically boring stuff that is only just related to somebody else's agenda and not their own.
Yeah, I very much there was a real sense of them as teenagers of that, and it would just happen in their own time frame. Like, and there was often there was a waiting. Oh, you can't do that till you're 16. You've got to wait till you're 16. It doesn't count till you're 16. There was this kind of, so often at 15 was this year of like waiting and just like, oh, I've done everything I can do, waiting for 16 where I can get my driver's license, enroll into Kura, the correspondence school, or whatever it is, So it's kind of, Charlie's story is okay because he was more, he wasn't waiting for anybody. He could just start building it up organically.
It's just so arbitrary, isn't it? The whole 16 thing. It's just so the 5, all the ages where we say we deign, like this is what happens at this age, and at this age you can do this, but not you, Hannah. You're just like dossing around Europe when you're 14 years old. Wow, so fun.
Really
okay, Jane, just a couple of questions for you. Okay, why were you stirred to write up your unschooling lives in book form?
Well, a few reasons. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Hannah. I should have it here. I've always taken notes, and I've always been a writer inside. So I always had this vague idea. But I think over the last 10 years, since we've really expanded out into a national unschooling community, I've just met so many, like hundreds or dozens and dozens and dozens of parents with their 5 and their 6-year-olds looking at my teenagers and going, but what do I need to do? How are they getting to university? Can you talk to my partner because they are really scared that they won't be able to operate in the real world? There's all these questions. And as I had older children and I had this confidence and this experience and just really letting them be themselves, just seeing all this fear and this concern and these questions coming through. And that's who I've written the book for, really, is just saying, hey, this is how it can work. This is how it worked for my guys. This is how what our lives were like. Everyone's lives will be different. And I think on another level, it's a good kind of like a transition for me. Charlie's 18, so it's quite good timing. I've empty nested myself. Sorry, Charlie, a little bit early. I empty nested him, and but he survived all right. He seems to be all right. And so I guess part of me, for me, that's, well, I kind of thought it'd be the end of that. Just tying all the knots up, tying it up. Like that was me raising my kids as unschoolers, and here it is. Like, And like, you know, I've learned some stuff. I hadn't really thought that because, you know, I only just feel grown up myself. But I'm like, oh, when I talk to people, I've got so much to say. You know, people stop me in the supermarket and ask me, and I'm like, oh, and I'm quite excited about it, and I love it, and I'm so grateful that I could do that, and so proud of my kids. And we've had such a blast. Like, I've had 23 years of just fun, and I just loved every minute so much. So I really wanted to share that with anyone that wants to hear it. You know, lots of people asked as well, can you write a book, please? Can you write it?
Yeah.
So that's why, I guess there's a whole mixture of reasons.
Cool. I love that you bring up fun again. You know, that's come up a couple of times, and I think yeah, the amount of fun that is available in this way of life is just you know, it's unreal. I feel like you know, modern society has lost the concept that family life can be genuinely fun, because we're moving so often at such a fast pace to so many different agendas with so much pressure and expectations around success and future focus and all that kind of thing. And once you actually alleviate the pressures and the speed, you create so much more space for fun and joy.
And I think as an adult, it's almost a spiritual practice being around children, because they really ground you in the moment. They're so focused in the moment. And it's just always just used to constantly drag me back. I'd be a little bit future focused, and what about next week, what we had to do, and then they would just drag you right back to this really fun, really creative, amazing thing. We're talking about this, doing this. And that was, I think for me personally, is like emotional, mental and physical health. It was the best, like, job, the best life for me as a person, really.
Can you share with us an insight from your book, like sort of like a top tip, one little piece of info or one little reflection or encouragement?
What about a story? One of the stories.
One of the stories. Do you want me to read a little bit of like one of the stories?
Yeah.
The stories are freaking awesome. I'll just grab a book.
Yeah, do that and hold it up like this so we can.
I think Hannah's ready. Hannah's ready to like compete for the book reading, eh?
I think I, you know, all through this, I keep thinking, oh, that's my key philosophy. That's my key philosophy. A lot of key philosophies. I think one of the main ones is that children are people too, and treating them like they are people is a big thing. But one of the big learning curves for me, oh help, there it is the art gallery story. I really like the story.
Oh yeah.
This is about Ollie. Ollie's not here on this chat, and he's got a whole different story and journey as well, which slots in the middle of Hannah and Charlie. But this was about all of us. We went to see the Impressionists, an art exhibition from Europe. I was happy to wander around taking in the art. Hannah wandered and chatted with my mum. Charlie was 5 years old, so I showed him some various parts and paintings I thought he could relate to. It was an inspiring collection of famous paintings. When we'd finished and exited the exhibition, I noticed that Ollie's eyes were shining and he could barely control his 8-year-old excitement. He then shared with us his experience, the exact number of security cameras, the positioning and movements of the security guards, the exits and the alarms. He was ignited with the buzz of figuring out how someone might steal one of the priceless paintings and how well they were protected. He talked at great length about what he'd seen, and he'd worked out various scenarios. The art, I don't think he even looked at a painting. And this was a defining moment and a great lesson to me, that to have no expectations about what another person takes away from an experience. And I think that's the thing. What I did is I just showed my kids the world. I just laid stuff out like a buffet. Like Hannah was saying, we didn't live in an empty house. We had inspiring people. And I did my thing. Like the culture I created was adventuring in the outdoors and music and all the stuff I love. So we didn't go to the stock cars, because I don't like the stock cars. Sorry. Charlie hasn't ridden a horse. We didn't go surfing.
I've ridden a horse now.
Charlie hasn't ridden a horse.
So, I mean, there's things missing, obviously, but we had I was like, this is life. This is a buffet. Like, this is what ballet looks like. This is what kayaking feels like. This is what, you know, covering yourself in paint feels like. This is what making bread, all the things. I just was like, and because they're all different people, they'd bring all these to the family. Someone would be reading something or bring something from an extracurricular class. And I'd be like, oh, and we'd ask questions about it and they'd bring it into the mix. So yeah, that's really my two philosophies are just showing them the world. I felt that was my job, feeding them, reading Harry Potter, showing them the world, which might just be the local river.
I just want to be clear. I have ridden a horse now. Like I have ridden a
Okay,
horse
good.
now.
Phew.
It's taken 18 years, but I finally have. I just want to clear that up.
Oh, good.
Key takeaway, Charlie.
The comments were gonna light up. They were gonna be like, "What? Charlie hasn't ridden a horse? Oh my
I'm
god!"
gonna clear the air. Like,
Wow.
don't want controversy on your YouTube channel, Lucy.
No. Okay, I'm so glad that you clarified that. That's so good.
I felt like a bit of a failure, and I think skiing actually. Charlie's the only one that hasn't skied.
Oh my
But, you know,
god!
I'm not
Go
perfect.
back, redo the whole childhood. Honestly,
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know how you have the audacity to write a book about unschooling.
I know. I feel a bit of a fraud. I should put a disclaimer. Charlie has never skied.
You gotta
Okay.
leave some growth for adulthood, though, right? Like
Oh god, that's so true.
Stock cars.
We'll get there.
You got to have at least one thing left on the bucket list. Okay, Jane, can you tell us where people can find your book? Even though readers, Charlie hasn't skied. If you still want to read this book, you can find it.
So the book is on Amazon at the moment. There is a Kindle and a print to order. If you live in New Zealand, however, I am just putting together a book tour, and I'll be in the North Island in May, traveling around, including visiting Lucy and co, and I'm doing some book signing events. So yeah, it's out in the world now, and hope you get a copy.
And you
she
can
has social media.
Yes.
Yeah.
Social media too. Yes. So on Instagram,
Mhm.
Jane Evans Author with underscores between them.
Amazing. And I'll put some links in the description box as well, so people can find you very easily and find the book very easily. That has been such a joy to talk with you all. I honestly could have talked for like 9 more hours all about this. Beautiful insights from you all, and I'm so grateful that you could come onto my channel today.
Thanks, Lucy. Nice to talk with you.